Good evening. So this is the part 2 of our current affairs session on environmental pollution. In this part, we will be dealing with where we have finished yesterday. Moving forward, we will be beginning with the topic of the World Health Organization's air quality guidelines, and when you compare them with the Indian version, what is the difference? In 2021, there is a mains question in environment on the same topic. What is the difference between the guidelines of WHO and India? Okay, that is the context. Now, the first time in 16 years, World Health Organization updated the metrics of safe health standards that particular air should have. So, why was this done? Because the increasing incidents that were found due to particulate matter more than anything else. That was a very big problem. Here at this juncture, I would like to clarify two things. PM 2.5, PM 10. Both these particulate matter have different pathways on how they will impact our human body. PM 2.5 will directly impact our neurogenerative ability and basically brain and everything associated with the internal system, brain and internal system. And the second PM10 will essentially affect our lungs. So the basic difference you have to understand: internal systems and lungs. This is the primary difference. When WHO upgraded for the very first time, it became a point of contention, especially in the context of Delhi pollution. Delhi, being the national capital region, always becomes a point of focus, and even in 2021 when these guidelines came up, obvious comparison would pop up, right? So even now, there is a private body which came up with rankings of the air quality. The government denied them as scientific and said that we will stick to WHO's air quality guidelines. Even in that scenario, we are severely underperforming. The standards itself are so loose that the justification given is also bad, that we are simply ignoring the health impact. This is the context. Now, specifically speaking, WHO recognized that if this strict levels of pollution are in fact imposed on developing countries, it would be very difficult. So there is a staggered approach. When you see things like this IT1, IT2, etc., which are usually not discussed in our newspapers, the pragmatic ladder approach, as you see here, is given by WHO to ensure that air quality guidelines are adhered to. Now, it is not important to remember numbers, but take a look at this. You will usually have a simple goal. You have to reach that goal. Then, in phase-wise manner, you have to reduce that pollution. For example, in India's context, we have National Ambient Air Quality Standards. What is the difference between this and Air Quality Index? What is the purpose? This and AQI, are they serving the same purpose? Okay, there are different pollutants, but for whatever pollutants that are in common, why have two different metrics? There must be some purpose, right? What is that purpose? Correct. Ambient air quality standards. Always pay attention to the nomenclature. Quality standard. It is a regulatory standard that is imposed for at a national level. But when it comes to air quality index, it is more like a tool which makes it understandable. Now we are talking about air quality is 400, 500, but what is it 400, 500? Common public are able to understand. It should be somewhere in 60 to 70 range or less than that. It is somewhere around 500. So 10x more than what is allowed. So it captures public imagination in a very easy way. So the purpose is different. Standards are supposed to be followed, and these standards are actually set on the basis of World Health Organization. I'm sorry, I have a bad throat today, so please excuse me. PM 2.5 and PM 10. Take a look at the international standards and the national standards. We are very, very lenient. WHO believes that if you have 5, it's okay, but we have almost 8x. For PM 10, it is almost 4x. Imagine if PM 10 itself is so, dangerous, like in that quantity, we are normalizing almost 4x. If you are in the NCR region, where one hand you have this smog problem, but if you move to the outskirts and the other peripheral areas of the core area, like Faridabad, Noida, Gurgaon, all these places have different problems. All of them have the smoke problem, but for example, Noida, you have a lot of construction activity and industrial activity. You have all the pollutants, particulate matter, dust, everything. On the other hand, you have the problem of landfills. Huge land pile, you'll have pile of waste, mountain of waste. Ghaziabad, Faridabad kind of areas. How can you address this problem of landfills? That's another topic. Anyway, coming back, this is the reality. So what are you supposed to by heart? The 12 pollutants in the National Ambient Air Quality Index versus Air Quality Index. Air Quality Index is a topic that is a current affairs in 2016. But now it's a part of the main syllabus. So you have to know the difference between NAAQS, AQI, what are the pollutants, what are common, what are different. Do you think benzene is a part of the air quality index? Why? Yes. Yesterday we discussed something. What is the most common source of benzene? Now, why are we not including that in AQI? There must be some logic. How do you measure benzene? What is the way in which you observe benzene even in the petrol bunks? It's a vapor. Installing sensors for vapors is very expensive. That is one problem. Second problem, if you are capturing at the source, what is the point of putting up a sensor? The amount of benzene produced through exhaust, I will have to go back and verify, but from whatever limited knowledge I have, from tailpipe exhaust, the amount of benzene that is emitted is nominal. Okay, it is still a problem, but it is a bigger problem at the source rather than in the traffic areas or normal. Sorry. Yeah, when the that's what I meant. After the Bharat Stage 6 emissions are enforced, previously in petrol the amount of benzene is high. After that it is reduced to 1%. So there's no point tracking it. It's going to make it even more expensive. And secondly, air quality index is more about dust and particulate matter and the other greenhouse gases or other kinds of pollutants which will have a impact on our health, respiratory as well as the internal systems. So this is a list of pollutants that are released from various industries, whereas air quality index is more for public imagination to understand. It's a list of these, which it's like a bare minimum list which will adversely impact the life of people. That is the basic difference. This is this a practically enforceable thing? Like legally enforceable? Is it legally binding? Air quality guidelines? No. If it is legally enforceable, we would rather make it right to environment. Like you actually enforce right to environment universally. Yeah, one more point. CPCB mandate. The National Ambient Air Quality Standards are set by CPCB. Yeah, this is the difference. Please note this down. Air quality is at a global level. National Ambient Air Quality Standards is enforced by CPCB under the Water Act 1974. There is a important point here. In many policy circles, they often quote that even though WHO sets a limit of 5 for PM 2.5, since we don't understand the behavior of such tiny particles, it is ideal that we have absolutely no exposure to this whatsoever. Clear? Please note that point. These 3 points you need to note down. This is a plausible prelims question. Every bit, every piece of information here is a possible prelims question which is combining both static as well as the dynamic part. Here, go back and check what are these 12 pollutants. What is the difference between AQI and this? Nature of mandate. You will get multi-statement questions in prelims on distinctions like this. For example, if I say the air quality guidelines imposed by WHO is binding in nature. False. So this is one trap to avoid. Take a look at this. India did not adopt the 2021 norms. If you think it is just because World Health Organization updated, don't automatically assume that we adopt. So I'll just tell you what are the important points that you have to remember. One more thing, the latest current affairs is that government has rejected the 2025 IQ Air. It's a private organization which came up with these rankings. We rejected it. All these are pieces of information that you need to know. That's all. Based on this information only, you will be able to decipher the logic and attempt prelims questions. Now, let's. Okay, anyway, you saw the answer. Now, tell me the reasoning. It is not legally binding in the first place. Both the statements, both the facets of the statement are wrong. Fourth one, this is right. Sorry, third one. India's current are identical. Complete alignment with global safety norms. Extreme statement. Okay, we are reflecting the design architecture of UPSC, like how UPSC uses certain words, certain methodology to design a question, and we are framing those questions. So you know how UPSC designs a question, you also know the context, you also know the information. That way you are preparing for this topic very comprehensively. Clear? Moving forward. Now, see, the next frontier of UPSC where they will pick up questions is molecular level pollutants. Not air pollutant, not water pollution, like in a very large scale. We are going to the molecular level. Some specific molecules which are there in news. For example, you have perfluorocarbon or PFS, PFOS. You will have what was that random chemical name that is found in that? There was a question regarding plastic, triclosan or something. There was one specific molecule which was a pollutant, was asked in prelims questions. Right? Is it triclosan or something? Triclosan, right? Yeah. So random names like this suddenly pop up from nowhere. So it will be extremely difficult for you to know the context. And this specific topic is very important. This will be a differentiator for you guys because this topic information is scattered across different sources. It took me time to go through down to earth articles, PIB articles, ministry reports, understanding the background context of international discussions on this. And then I came up with this. So molecular level contaminants is the next frontier where UPSC can ask questions. So let's see. So there is this concept called molecular Anthropocene. It highlights a critical shift in human environmental impact from visible landscape changes to pervasive, invisible molecular alterations that pose unique challenges. For example, you have the so-called persistent organic pollutants, or simply put, they are called forever chemicals because it is extremely difficult to destroy them. The very purpose with which they are created makes them difficult to destroy. What? They're used in non-stick cookware. They're used in raincoats. If they get easily destroyed, the purpose with which they are created itself gets lost. But after a point of time, you might have wear and tear and they become practically useless. But they cannot be recycled. And when you can't recycle, they stay there in the environment for a long period of time. And once they enter into the food chain, they become pollutants that cannot be removed from our environment. So this necessitates that we completely eliminate those harmful chemicals from our environment. We should stop manufacturing that. When I say molecular Anthropocene, the phenomenon is that we are, because of the human development, the so-called development, creating artificially these pollutants which are impacting our life. These molecules commonly are classified under a theme called endocrine disruptors. There is a difference between our internal, internally in our body, hormones, enzymes, all this catalysts or basically chemicals in our body which help us in functioning properly. You have two broad categories, endocrine system and exocrine system. What do you mean by the endocrine and exocrine? What is the specific purpose? Endocrine, exocrine. What is an endocrine gland, exocrine gland? Can you give me an example? Ninth class biology. What is endocrine system? Why is it called endocrine? Why are these chemicals disrupting endocrine systems? Yeah, that is the main reason. So which concept in environment are you supposed to know? Bioaccumulation, biomagnification. These two concepts have a slight difference. Can anyone tell me what is bioaccumulation, biomagnification difference? Correct. Bioaccumulation means it's like, you have a tumbler, drop by drop you are adding into that tumbler. Biomagnification means it gets concentrated from lower level of the food chain to higher level of the food chain. Both these processes, when they enter into our body with whatsoever mechanism, will disrupt our normal functioning, and that's why they are dangerous. Since they're causing this kind of dangerous situations, there will be discussions and debates on it. Global level governance challenges will be there. And when you are a aspiring bureaucrat, if it is a governance challenge, you need to know the basic science behind it, some basic facts and the use cases. Why we should regulate certain industries, you should know. See, let's take a step back and understand it from a market perspective, why you should know these kind of points. Imagine you are the owner of the company. You listed your company on the stock market. It's doing well. People are loving your product. But the problem is, this is becoming a long-term pollution headache. So the government suddenly decided that we should not allow this. And instant ban is imposed on it from next week. What will happen to the investors in the stock market? What will happen to the consumers? The entire industry and the ecosystem that is built around this product. You need some time to phase it out. Not only phase it out, once you introduce some product into the market, it is essentially solving one specific problem. Say, for example, take the case of plastic bags. Do you want to use plastic bag? Do you have an alternative that is as practical as a plastic bag and as economical? No. If we have, why would we stick to plastic? One, technological solutions are not available. Two, even if they are available, they are not economical. Once they satisfy these two criteria, phasing out anything is just a matter of time. Yes, the industry will get destroyed, but there is this concept of creative destruction. A new industry will come into the picture. You are forced to take those harsh decisions. That is why even big oil giants, let's say for example Aramco in Saudi, or even in India, you have big companies like ONGC, etc. They're moving towards green energy. The irony, you have NTPC Green, which is a new company that came into the market. NTPC is a thermal power company, but they are investing in green energy because they understand the eventual necessity to transition, move away from this coal towards that. It is in that larger market context, you understanding this little nuances in governance and these chemicals is relevant. So if you are actually making these products, you will come to the government and say, boss, you are stopping me from making this. At least give me some time to figure out what to do. I was not aware. Why did you allow me to do this in the first place if you think it's harmful? Neither you were aware nor am I aware. So let's all agree to have some bandwidth and eventually figure out. There are so many lives that are dependent there. So many people will lose their job. I agree this is harmful, but give us some time. If you have to decide how much time we should give, you should understand the impact. It is in that context you need to know all this. Okay. Now, here, often students get confused with microplastics and PFAS. There is a distinction. Microplastics are physical fragments of little tiny fragments of plastic. But when it comes to PFAS, they are chemical molecules that dissolve in water. But they are difficult to filter from water. So they will enter into our body. They'll dissolve in water, they'll get mixed with water, and they will stay there. And because it is very difficult to take them out of water, they become a governance challenge. Clear? I have to know this. Now, even if you want to, remove this kind of per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, which is one kind of a persistent organic pollutant, PFA. Usually what happens is, I will not go into the depth of the chemistry, but if you want to focus on taking them out of the environment, you have to completely destroy them. But what happens is that the treatment processes will just oxidize, meaning they will make it slightly more stable and leave it at that instead of completely removing them. So what actually happens is, overall the toxicity profile of these chemicals become much more higher. If it is too much to handle, just understand that there are some chemicals at the molecular level which are difficult to destroy in our environment, because even if you try to remove them, they will, let's say for example, they get mixed with water, and no matter what technology we use, we can't remove them out of water. They will eventually enter into our bloodstream and destroy our health. One such persistent organic pollutant is PFAS. So if you see a word like this, PFAS, perfluoro, something like this, you have to associate it with POP, Stockholm Convention. The difference between bioaccumulation and biomagnification. One, it occurs when the rate of intake exceeds the rate of excretion. You have to understand the mechanism. Why will something get accumulated in our body? Our body has a natural filtration mechanism. Urination and excretion, sweating. Our excretory system pushes out all toxins. But accumulation happens because the time taken for this removal is much slower than anticipated, and it gets adding up. That is the process of bioaccumulation. Biomagnification, it is something that is stored in the fat tissue. Let's say, take the case of mercury. Fish body will have this concentration of mercury over a period of time. We catch hold of that fish, we eat it. That fat tissue of the fish will have that mercury. When we consume, it will get transferred into our body and eventually get stored into our own adipose tissue. This is the fat tissue. So when fat gets metabolized, slowly some amount of that mercury enters into our bloodstream, which then reacts with blood and slowly destroys our health. This is the mechanism. So to stop this kind of pollution, we have something called the Stockholm Convention for governing the so-called forever chemicals. Since they are difficult to destroy, they are called forever chemicals. Please understand this. So there are multiple phases of implementing this. Just like how we were discussing, it is not easy to phase out everything. The restriction phase is meant for a product called PFOS. We will see the difference here. If it is again getting too much of chemistry, you have to understand there are multiple categories within the PFS. Each category, because it is difficult to remove, or based on the fact that they can easily be removed, some of them will be outrightly outfaced. So, because there is an alternative technology which will cater to this need. Secondly, there is no alternative, it is a work in progress. Or there is a third category. The technology is available elsewhere. It is going to take a bit of time for it to become universal. So you will get enough time to bring that technology to a country like India. Eventually phase out. So depending on that, in different industries, you will have PFOS, PFOA and PFHXS. This is the most dangerous as of now. No exemptions are given, you have to phase out. I highly doubt they will go to this level and depth, but if they do, you need to know the difference. So just understand that. What is possible is you will have to know the source of these pollutants. For example, PFOA, it is found in non-stick pans. PFOS, it is found in chemical foams, stain protectors, etc. PFHXS is something that you will find in many components. The significance of this is that it is the longest half-life in human blood among all of this category. The longer it stays in your blood, the more dangerous it becomes. So this will have to be kicked out as soon as possible. Okay? See, sometimes I might deliver some extra information. The bare minimum information that you all need to know, you got it. This is the extra chemistry part. If you don't want to know about it, that's fine. But those who are curious, maybe you can go back and read about the chemistry part here also. If you don't know, that's fine. Now, yesterday we were discussing the problem with EVs. So there is one pollutant in news in this context, tire particles. Tire particles are generating non-exhaust emissions. Here, there is a chemical called 6-PPD, anti-ozonant. If you are interested in the chemistry, you can go back. At max, what UPSC will probably ask you is, in the context of something like, or they can say, which of the following represents 6-PPD molecule that is often seen in news? Fertilizers, tires, copper smelting, and some other mechanism like flue gas desulfurization or some random name they'll put it. Sometimes all you have to do is recognize. The minute you see this anti-ozonant, you will attach it to tire wear and tear. That is all you need to know. Because this is a new issue, this is the level. For the next 2 years, I don't think they will cross beyond this threshold. What is the 6-PPD quinone? It reacts with the atmospheric ozone and becomes a pollutant. Once ozone is at ground level, it enters into our body and it is a harmful thing. That is all you need to know. One other possible question, if they decide to go into depth, what is the difference between anti-ozonant and antioxidant? Ozone, when it is at ground level, destroys tires. It will eat away those tires. Anti-ozonant is added to ensure that it is not the case. Oxidation of iron causes what? When an antioxidant is applied, what does it mean? You also have antioxidants in our body. Nutrologists, nutrition specialists, they'll tell you, right? You should have a lot of antioxidants in your body. Why is oxidation a bad thing? Any chemistry background students here? There is a concept called autophagy. Cell automatically dies over a period of time. When you put that under oxidative stress, you are speeding up the process, you are catalyzing the process. So antioxidants will safeguard your cell. They are like insurance policy for your cells. So there are something called free radicals, which are like the villains in our body. They will destroy the cells. So antioxidants are trying to protect us. Simply, this is the level of analogy you need to know. Oxidation will destroy the material, basically. Clear? So when you apply this antioxidants and anything to protect the surface, when eventually they get worn out, they will also become pollutants eventually. Yeah. Now, one more thing. Tire particles are technically classified as microplastics. Please remember this. In the context of this tire wear and tear, two different things we spoke. One is this anti-ozonant. The other thing is the fact that the particles that you see, small fragments, physical fragments, they are classified as microplastics. As far as the new evolving issue of EVs is concerned, these two are the important things. This can be possible. One more thing why this is a really big issue is because as of now it's completely unregulated. There is no restriction. And if you have to talk about the health impact, there is a process called urban runoff mortality syndrome. See, I am not a doctor, I am not a trained professional, I don't know the specific details about it. Just like you, I collected it from newspapers and journals and I am putting it here. If you are interested enough, at this point of time, I don't think UPSC will test the pathways of how this is going to happen. All you need to know is it will impact your mind or brain. Okay, that's all I'm interested in right now. But if you are curious, after you have done everything else, you can come back and check the specifics of this. But as of now, there is something called urban runoff mortality syndrome, which I am not aware of at this point. It is not the top priority for me to know what this is, but just read this. Okay. Also, this same thing is also a problem for salmon fish. How many of you know salmon fish? What is salmon fish? Why is it so famous? It's a very good source of lean protein, healthy protein, healthy nutrition. So that is a very expensive product. Like salmon fish is very expensive because of the ongoing EV transition. Wherever the salmon fish is found, in those areas, the water runoff is eventually leading to death of the salmon fish, premature death of the salmon fish. If you are interested, read more about it. I just read a passing reference and I thought this can be a possible question. I'm not going into the depth of the process there. Something that has got to do with EV tires is killing a fish that is living elsewhere. That is what fascinated me. So that's the reason I put this up here. Now, there are some new updates regarding battery waste. Here, you need to know some basic points. When the updated rules came, they brought the industrial batteries and EVs also into the ambit. Previously, they were not there because EV market is not that big. So that is the first thing you need to know. Ignore the numbers. You can, if you can remember. But previously, the previous version did not have this EVs and all. Now you have them. The mechanism, EPR certificate trading. What is EPR? Extended producer responsibility. What extended? What is this producer? What is the responsibility? Correct. But why is it put on the manufacturer? It closes the supply chain loop. If the producer is taking up the responsibility to collect it back, only they will know how much went out of their factory, how much of it is coming back. They are best equipped to address this issue. That's the reason responsibility is placed on the producer. So let's say if they don't have the necessary infrastructure to recycle and maintain all this accounting system or all the necessary infrastructure, you can figure out an alternative mechanism to set the game running. So in that context, meanwhile, when you are already producing, to collect it back, this concept of certificate trading came into the picture. Read about this. Recyclers generate EPR certificates based on the process waste. Producers purchase the certificates to fulfill their targets, creating a liquid market for recycling credits and decoupling collection logistics. If I have to figure out where is the waste that is produced, it is such a logistic challenge. So let's say if I'm producing 100 kgs of waste, I will not mind paying up some money to some guy who is collecting that waste and giving it back. Right? You don't have to collect the exact waste. You will have to collect exact equivalent of the waste. Even in that case, if that waste is collected in some other city, are you going to tell that, I'll collect it from there? Again, it's a logistics challenge. So to avoid that, just like how in the negotiable warehouse receipts, a concept in agriculture, where let's say a farmer in Gujarat wants to sell his potatoes to a company in Hyderabad, all he has to do is take those potatoes, give it to the local market, warehouse. They will give that certificate, take that certificate, put it in the market. Some guy from Hyderabad will buy it and take it to the Hyderabad market. Same quality potato, he will get it. What is the problem solved here? Logistics. Similarly, here also logistics problem is solved. Here, in carbon credits or this kind of environmental related markets, the biggest challenge is price volatility. Suddenly, people will start giving a lot of certificates, the prices will crash. To prevent that, there is a floor and ceiling price. How much the mechanics behind it, not necessary to remember. You just have to be aware that government took some measure to address the market volatility. That's all you need to know. That's same points. Now, try to address this question. The rules mandate that the producer of the battery must physically collect the used batteries equivalent to their sales target to fulfill EPR. Is that right? Now, take a look at the fourth statement. Regulatory framework excludes lithium-ion batteries used in EVs. It doesn't make any sense. Why will they do that? So answer is 2 and 3. Now, waste management, you will have 3 different methodologies for recovering the waste, like 3 different processes. One is actual recovery of material. Then you have something called extended generator responsibility. This is a new concept, EGR. And then you have biomining. Okay. Just take down the high value extraction, material extraction, those points. Just write down, I'll explain. This is an important concept, so you might want to note this down. Write this down, I'll tell. We'll begin with the most important one, that is bio mining. See, in NCR region, huge landfills, like you have mountains of waste. That is a very big problem which is meant to be solved. There you have this concept of biomining where uh, you use biological agents, some microbial activity, so that those microbes eat the biodegradable waste, and you will try to reclaim that land which is getting wasted underneath this waste. That is the thing here. It's a very costly process. That is a problem. Second most important thing for our exam is this EGR. What is EGR? Extended Generator Responsibility. A novel concept where large institutions or entities, let's say for example, you have a very big university like Osmania, or a closed campus, some IITs or some medical colleges, which produce a lot of waste. This is a common process in huge medical colleges, which will have a hospital within them. So if you set up a waste processing plant within the compound there itself, the overall pressure on the governance structures who are responsible for collecting this waste will get reduced. So locally itself, the situation is addressed. What is the difference between producer responsibility and generator responsibility? Exactly. It's a economic related term where the focus is on the producer of the commodity. Here, end user is generating this waste and they are doing it in bulk, therefore responsibility is placed on them. That is the second most important topic. Then, material based recovery. In some materials, you have gold, silver, and some other high value commodities. So, if you want to recycle them, usually they are combined with other low value metals sometimes, and the overall cost of that will become very less. So the incentive to extract with a hyper focus on the expensive ones will be reduced, and we will have a generic process which will combine this waste along with the high value material. So the overall recovery cost, whatever business you will make if you are a recycler, it will come down. So now the government wants to incentivize people who are able to come up with this high quality material recovery. That is the update here. But the trap here is, again, just like in bio mining, it's very expensive to set up that. Is there anything that is missing? Yeah. Here, as far as green hydrogen is concerned, we will again cover these points when we are dealing with energy as a topic, energy transition as a theme in itself. But since we are here and talking about all of this, we'll anyway uh, discuss this also. Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, they want to set a official standard. There are various ways in which you produce hydrogen. Green hydrogen is that hydrogen which is produced from cleaner fuels. The definition of green hydrogen has a certain criteria now. 2 kgs of CO2, beyond that you should not produce. Otherwise it will enter into the so-called category of grey hydrogen. The very purpose of bringing hydrogen is greenhouse gas emissions will be reduced. In the process of developing that, if you are producing more carbon, it becomes pointless and also expensive. Clear? Here, when we are talking about the green hydrogen accreditation projects, you have to know that this is meant for energy transition. And we are specifically talking about energy efficiency. The nodal agency, therefore, is not Pollution Control Board or MNRE directly, but Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Please note this down. The verification is happening in this green energy transition, especially with respect to hydrogen. Anything that has got to do with efficiency is by Bureau of Energy Efficiency. I can see your energy levels dipping. This is the last slide. Please bear with me. There is something called site. Another piece of information. Just note it down. I'll again repeat it anyway because you're already trained. Have a look at this. Site. It's something that has got to do with hydrogen storage. Site program is creating demand for green ammonia. What is green ammonia? What is the site program? We'll discuss, but write down at least so that you have a point of reference that we covered. The next time when you are revising these notes, you'll at least get that out and go back to searching it on the net. I'll explain this. This requires some time. I'll stop now. Okay, one last, because we will wrap this up. In agriculture, there is one more pollutant, chlorpyrifos. This is again a chemical that requires to be regulated because it has neurotoxicity, and India did not completely ban it. Only partial ban is there on specific crops. So we are restricting the use. What are the crops? Jujube, citrus, tobacco. This is not a total ban. It remains legal for major crops like rice, cotton, non-agriculture uses such as termite control. You might get a question on this topic. It's a very important point. So please gather your last bit of energy for today and write this down. Chlorpyrifos. Down to Earth is a very beautiful source of articles like this. Usually UPSC picks up from Down to Earth. So you might not be getting the time to read all this. That's the reason I'm picking up these points. Okay. For now, I won't go into the depth of other details now. Just know this. This part is important. Okay. That's it for the day. We'll again meet on Saturday. Sure. Bye. Have a good day.